and I'm walking around the ring, high-fiving people, like trying to soak it all in. And then I see my dad, who's on the hard camera side, and he's crying, you know.
Wow.
So I hug him, and he says, "I love you so much," and I say, "I love you" to him. Sorry, I'm getting upset here. Uh, and it was just awesome, and I'll never forget that. I hugged him. I got up on the apron. We went to start the match, and Kurt actually messed up, like, and he jumped me before we said he was going to jump me, and but it was better. Like it was so much better.
Podcasting has been something that I have been passionate about. As a matter of fact, I've been doing this for 11 years. Whether you want to talk a YouTube based show or a traditional podcast, I started in the professional wrestling world. And it started with me just talking about a sport that I love. And I was blessed to be able to meet people in this business, people that would become friends. Well, today's guest is somebody who was a wrestler for well over a decade on the independent scene, and now he's a podcaster. And I wanted to bring him on this show because I know there are a lot of people who don't really understand the world of professional wrestling. And I wanted to tell the story of somebody who's a wrestler, and they can talk about what's life after pro wrestling, especially for somebody who didn't wrestle in the WWE. So my guest today, Nico Sozio, good friend of mine, comes on to discuss his career, going to college, and then choosing to wrestle while in college and wrestling afterwards, and the balance of wrestling during the weekends and maintaining, a 9 to 5, and then what's he doing now that he's no longer wrestling. So ladies and gentlemen, get ready for today's episode with Nico Sozio. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the line today, I got a good friend of mine, somebody that I happen to meet in the wrestling business. And for people, you'll find out today that that's not a word that you can always use loosely in wrestling, unfortunately. So, I was happy to connected with this gentleman. Man, almost, well, it was 2012, the first time we crossed paths, but really, first time we really held conversations was 2013. And that's the one and only Nico Sozio. Sozio, what's up, bro?
How are you, Mr. Waters? What's happening, buddy? I'm very good. I'm very good.
Man, I'm honored to have you on here. As somebody who grew up liking wrestling and only was, just had plans on being a fan, to be able to build connections and make have friendships with people who did the had the courage to get in the ring, man. It's a
Sure.
dream.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a wild thing. And I mean, there's times now, even in my post wrestling career, where I reflect on it, and it's like it was almost like it was a different life. You know what I mean? Because there's the way that I viewed pro wrestling before I was ever in the business. There's the way that I viewed it while I was in the business, and then I guess you kind of have it. Everyone sort of has their own perspective on their career and how they feel now that they're no longer wrestling. So it's
Mhm.
kind of it's kind of strange, but like you said though, it does seem like, even as a kid, something that's intangible, whether it's meeting a wrestler, getting a wrestler's autograph, but certainly, having some business inside the entertainment form of entertainment. Yeah, it is a really bizarre experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, you grow up and you turn on the television and you see these larger than life characters, and you like, man, that looks real cool. And then you go to your first wrestling show. It's like you starstruck. What was your first pro wrestling memory as a fan and as a child?
I mean, I think like most people, I remember seeing it on TV first and foremost. I have an older brother who's about 3.5 years older than me, and certainly my father was always in the picture as well. And they were both big traditional sports guys, you know what I mean? And I couldn't care less about like regulation sports, you know what I mean? Just your big four or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but no, like my brother was like just an encyclopedia of statistics and everything else. Like, you know, um, so it was really weird for me to sort of go the other way. But that's not to say that they weren't also into pro wrestling too. You know what I mean? But they were just, like I said, big traditional sports guys. But I just like I said, I remember it being on TV, and I'm 38 years old, so like any memories I have of it are late 80s, early 90s, like those generations of WCW and WWF. Um, and then as a really young kid, my father took us to the Spectrum one time, and we saw like, this is still when, like, the Rougeaus were there and stuff. Like, this is, like, the Zeus era of Hulk Hogan, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because I remember seeing Zeus and I'm pretty sure Hogan in some sort of, like, tag combination of a main event. But, like, you know how, like, anything before 6 or 7 years old for most people is pretty shaky. So, like, I just have, like, little blips of images and memories of that as well. But so that those are, like, probably my earliest memories of pro wrestling, and, I guess it's sparking my interest and dazzling my eyes, you know?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's really cool. When did you decide that you wanted to jump into the ring, and what was your brother and your parents' reaction?
Well, I guess what I was leading towards before when I was talking about my family was like I was always the one that was different and into the more non-traditional stuff. Like I was the artist, I was into the comics and X-Men, and my brother didn't care about any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But so I guess like I said, I was the one that was always a little bit more of a standout and different. And I think it was throughout high school, me and my buddy Jiggy, shout out to Justin Klein. Uh, we were like hardcore into WWF, soon to be E at the time, because this is the late '90s, and we legit had raw parties at somebody's house every week. Like, so we would get a bunch of snacks, and you know we weren't drinking yet at the time, or certainly not on Monday nights, you know what I mean? So we did all that kind of stuff, and then I think we did the pay-per-views at my house because my family had the black box. Like we
Yeah.
stole we had the steel preview, as we called it. So we did like the main events at my house. So I guess what I'm getting at is we were always hardcore fans. We always talked and joked about going to wrestling school and wanting to do it. Um, but I think for me, it was the 1999 No Mercy ladder match with Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys. Like, just hearing the pops that they were getting, and like the rush that it was giving me watching it. I like just the performer in me, like the kid that like needed everybody to look at him for some reason. Like it spoke to that for me. So I was just like, oh shit, like I need to do this, and I need to be the one jumping off the ladder to get the reaction. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I want to feel the rush that these guys are feeling right now. Like after Jeff Hardy did that leg drop and then was on his knees, and everybody was losing their mind because they had never seen anything like that at the time. Like that sort of cemented for me that if I'm gonna do it, I want to be just like these guys, you know.
Yeah, man. Now, you mentioned you're an artist. We'll get back to your wrestling career, but I
Sure,
I
sure,
I,
sure.
I know I've seen quite a few of your graphic design work. Did you start that in high school? Did you start it while you were like when did you take up drawing and art?
Uh, well, like as I mentioned, I was into some comics and the X-Men and just like Marvel in general as a kid. Anywhere from, we'll say, like 8, 9 through like 12, 13ish. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember spending a lot of time, probably like again, like we'll say 9 through 12ish. I'm not 100% sure. Like, I would draw the comics, like, I would just look and look and just try to copy them, you know what I'm saying? I would spend
Mhm.
a lot of time, um Like, I liked Gambit a lot, so, like, I would just look at pictures of him and try to draw it over here and shade it as best as I could and mimic it, you know? Um, so that's probably where, like, a lot of it started, but just probably in middle school and high school, again, this is, like, the mid to late '90s, Photoshop, was something that you could pirate, and, I think I had a few pirated versions of that and taught myself some of it, learned the software a little bit on my own, but had none of the design principles or know how to actually create anything that looked nice. Like, I mean, since that time, I've been formally trained. You know what I mean? But so middle school, high school, I started messing around in Photoshop, and even before that, Microsoft Paint and stupid shit like that. But so like I've always been doing it. Like I definitely have 20 years experience doing it. Probably only about 15 professionally.
Okay, now did you go like what did you jump into first further? Was it that or wrestling school?
I definitely was in college before I started wrestling school. I went to Philadelphia University, which is now, I think, Jefferson College or Jefferson Hospital University or something like that. Regardless, I went there for, I guess, what was considered or what was called, I don't know what the major is called now, but it was digital design. So it sort of encompassed graphic design, but it definitely showcased a lot of digital photography, video, coding and flash work, website design. So like I sort of had like this well-rounded digital uh design again degree. And this was 2000. I was in college 2000 to 2004. I know I've already acknowledged that I'm old, listeners. Thank you. Uh so it wasn't until the end of my sophomore year of college that I started to train at CZW.
Okay, so
So
you was in college right before the Facebook MySpace era.
yep. Yeah, I guess MySpace was taken off like 2004-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I remember I didn't really have one till actually I probably didn't have one till like 5, 6-ish. Like
Okay.
yeah, because like I just remember getting into it around then, we'll say. But I know it existed before then. But yeah,
Mm.
I was in college when that shit was all, starting to boom.
Are you planning a huge celebration and perhaps you need some balloons to make your event look nice? Well, I have the perfect place for you, and that's Symphony of Balloons. Symphony of Balloons will do all events, including baby showers, weddings, birthday parties, or that special anniversary. Contact them today at 410-802-1531 or email them at symphonyofballoons@gmail.com and tell them Brian H. Waters sent you. So what led you to CZW? Now at the time, if I'm not mistaken, they're pretty much the biggest dog in town, correct?
Yeah, at that time. I think I I wasn't even trying to I wasn't taking a dig. But,
We'll get there.
it was a Zandig. But, I actually started watching CCW in 2001, and because it was local, like, incredibly local,
Mhm.
they had weekly programming on WGTW, which is the public access local Philly channel, and I think I stumbled across it like anybody would I don't know. I think possibly somebody might have even called like an uncle or somebody and said, "Hey, turn this on. This shit's crazy. It's like, this is like ECW or whatever." And I was like, "All right, let me check this out." And I,
And for
and I
the
think,
listeners out there, just to put a timeline, we're right at the end of the Monday Night Wars.
yeah,
WWE just bought WCW. So I know here in Maryland, we were kind of like, man, it sucks. We only got one program to watch, but you didn't have to deal with that because now you already quickly rebounded and found an alternative programming. Just kind of one for the people who don't know.
for sure, sure. And at that time, ECW had just like evaporated and bankrupted as well. You know what I'm saying? So, the two major companies merged, and the third, the small third alternative was no more either. So, yeah, and also this company was incredibly local to South Philly. They were running out of South Jersey, like I can't the names of the towns escape me, Mantua and stuff like that. I can't remember where else. Um, but they were planning on coming to the ECW arena in South Philly, and it was Cage of Death 3, which is Combat Zone Wrestling's equivalent to WrestleMania, and it was going to be their first show there, and like I said, it was at the iconic ECW arena, Bingo Hall. It's gone through 1,000 names since then, but it's now the 2,300 arena. But so I was like, oh, okay, they're coming to town. I'm going, like, you know what I mean? And I mean, funny story. I went with my brother and my a friend of mine, Christy Alfonso, and I don't even think we had tickets, but this was by far CCW's most packed show of all time. I think, ever. Uh, there was easily 1,500 to almost 2,000 people squeezed into that building, and it's not supposed to have 1,000 probably. Um, and I just remember we didn't even have tickets, and like there's a side door on the front street there, and somebody was coming out of it, or maybe like Frank Talent, rest in peace, Frank Talent, stuck his head out because he was either maybe swinging somebody in the side door or shooing somebody out. I don't remember what, but I just grabbed my brother and Chris, and I was like, "Come on, let's go." And I just said to Frank, like, "Yeah, no, we have tickets or whatever," and we totally snuck in. So like the first CCW show I ever went to, I snuck in, and somehow, some way, like again, this is 20 years ago, 19 years ago. We weaseled our way up to the front row because there was three seats right at the corner, and like we just sat down and nobody said dick to us because it was chaos in there, dude. It was total fucking chaos. Uh, but where was I going with that exactly? Why were we talking about? Why
Oh,
was
you was talking about you starting to wanting to train.
and how I found this place, and yeah, and I
Yeah.
guess how I came upon it. Okay, yeah. So like I said, I'm a sophomore in college at the time, and I think I discovered the company going into my sophomore year. So I discover the company and I start watching it on a week to week basis. And then that leads up to December of 2001 when they actually have Cage of Death at the arena. And then from December of 2001 into 2002, I was attending the shows every month with my friends and my brother. Not to be too boring about it, but like,
Oh
so
no,
my
this is
sophomore
your
year
story. You know me. I
uh,
love it.
of it, I sort of discover CZW and I start watching it week to week. Um, I attended my first show in South Philly, Cage of Death 3. That was December 2000 of 2001. So by 2 months later, I'm trying out at the school. Like I went with my friend to go try it, and I tried out with John Dahmer, who was the head trainer at the school at the time, and Zandig was there as well. So like I'm shitting my pants, you know what I mean? Because like the only two people there that are telling me what to do are John Dahmer and Zandig. So I went. A friend of mine came with me, and they were like, "Yeah, you're here if you want to be here. Like, you can train here. It costs this much. This is the down payment. Blah blah blah." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll most likely start in the summer, um, once I'm out of school, so that way I can like be going back and forth over the bridge, blah blah, whatever, you know." Just bitch about it. I should have started right then, but so needless to say, I didn't actually start training until after I was finished college. But so that pretty much takes us to the summer of 2002 when I started from there. And the head trainers were John and Eddie Valentine. I'm trying to think, like Chris Cash and GQ had just graduated and started, getting on the shows for probably the past year or whatever it was. Um, and it was just really crazy, man, because like I was still kind of transitioning out of like mark for CZW mode and into trainee for CZW mode. So like because it was much more of a family oriented locker room back then. So like people were always coming around the locker room, not the locker room, like visiting, excuse me, visiting the school and stuff, and like helping out for a day or whatever. So like Trent and Johnny would come by and like, Trent Acid was my hero. So it was like, oh my God, this is like unbelievable. I'm learning from Trent Acid right now or whatever. Cash was another one, like who was just like n- it never ran out of energy. You know what I mean? So if he was there, he got in the ring and started running around, and was like, "Come on, let's run a spot," and he would just blow you up to death. But but yeah, I mean that pretty much takes us up to, I guess, where and why.
Yeah, that sounds real cool. Um, I didn't get to know much about like Trent Acid until, unfortunately he was gone.
Right.
And I watched, a documentary and I saw, and saw the impact that he had. Do you have any like great memories of him?
Yeah, I mean, certainly anytime I had the privilege to watch him work, excuse me. Yeah, anytime I had a chance to watch him work live, it's hard to explain when you see somebody that performs in a way that it doesn't even make sense that they can go that fast or for that long, like the conditioning that you have to be in to to perform a certain way. But on top of being a great performer, he was a great character, you know what I mean? And he had charisma through the roof. So it was just like the most incredible worker and fundamental worker, on top of this crazy charismatic, good-looking kid. You know what I mean? He was just he was just the perfect junior heavyweight uh asshole, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But so I mean, besides obviously getting to watch him work, learn from him a little bit anytime that I did get a chance to train with him or under him, he was just a crazy prankster, jokester too, you know what I mean, behind the scenes, like always just kind of grabbing either trash or bottles and throwing them at people, like, and then like diving behind shit to make him, whoever you threw shit at, look back at me like, no, it wasn't me. It was this asshole hiding behind the locker or whatever. So he would do stuff like that. He loved to rib people, definitely make fun of people. He definitely would make fun of green guys all the time. And certainly without dragging his name through the mud too much. Like everybody knows he was not he wasn't a womanizer, but he got his. Let's just say that. Like, he got
He
his
was a
and
ladies'
wasn't.
man.
Yeah, he wasn't shy about chasing anything and everything down because that's just how he was. Uh, so you got a lot of funny stories there about that kind of stuff. Um, and there was a time too where he was just into, I guess we'll call it mild drugs and alcohol, before he unfortunately got into the things that led to his demise. You know, uh just like anytime you got to stand around and smoke weed with him, it was a treat because something stupid was going to come out of his mouth, or just some sort of dumb observation about the world, or he was going to break somebody's balls. So he was just one of these guys that was a character. He was really something special in the ring, and he was a really good friend to everybody that loved him.
Yeah. Now you work in CZW and you're starting to make a name for yourself. When did you get to the point where you wasn't green no more and you felt like, you know what, it's time that I get, on the show more, get some more more time in the ring, more opportunities to, wear the strap.
um well, I wouldn't say that there was ever a time where I s- like like, I guess, where I felt like I was treading water, or I wasn't getting mine. I
Okay.
think that I think that I was lucky enough, whether it was because I was actually talented enough among my class at the time, like whether I was actually more talented than anyone or everyone else. I'm not sure if that's the truth, but I feel like they threw me a bone a lot more than everyone else in my class. again, I don't know if that's because Zandig or Dahmer thought that I was getting it a little bit better or faster than Corey Castle and Jude and um, so just I can't think of anybody else. Christian Wolf, nobody's gonna know that reference, but but so I did get a lot of opportunities pretty early on, and I think that that worked. That was a little bit of a detriment to me personally, and not necessarily my career, but I don't think it was good for me to get what I got when I got it because I was a little too young and naive to realize that I hadn't truly earned it. You know what I mean? And maybe wasn't good enough to have what I had at the time.
Mhm. Now
Because
you also go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, no, I was just gonna say, like I said, I got a lot more singles opportunities than everybody else. I was probably in the junior title picture before everyone else, and was wrestling for that and winning that probably before I should have got it. So I think a lot of that went to my head. But that was all I was gonna say.
Okay. Now, your first championship win, what was it like? Did you, as we say, mark out? Did you, how was your reaction? Did you tell your family, hey, I'm going over tonight, or be at the show? It's gonna be something special.
Yeah, you definitely do that. You definitely, people that had been neglecting to come or couldn't make it before, were like, all right, I'm coming to this one. Oh, you're winning the big one. You know, sometimes it was like pulling teeth to get people to come. You know what I mean? You would think it would be more fun for people to, and don't get me wrong, you are asking a lot of somebody to give their whole night to a wrestling show because this is definitely back when the shows were hours long.
Mhm.
They were always 4 and 5 hours long or something stupid. But no, and you're asking a lot of people. It was at least $20, and you might have had to pay to park to whatever. But no, yeah, you definitely get everybody to come out. You tell them what's going on. You ruin it for everybody because you're so pumped. But I mean, I remember like the first, title I won, and I think it was I'm pretty sure it was the first title I won. It was the CCW Junior Heavyweight title, and it was in like a six-way ladder match or something like that. And I just remember it being pretty much business as usual, like with that stuff, and like, because I say shit like that and like it's a walk in the park, you know what I mean? Like if you had to go do a six-person ladder match right now, you'd be like, dude, fuck this. Like I'm not doing this ever for any reason, like not for anything. And I'm talking about it like, yeah, no, so it was business as usual. I wasn't nervous, but no, of course you're nervous and you're trying to execute an exciting, high quality scramble ladder match and also not get hurt. But you're not even thinking about that. At that age, I wasn't even thinking about shit like that. Like that wasn't even possible. But so yeah, and I remember climbing up there to get it and pulling it down and just celebrating it like a little harder, just like screaming a little bit extra, like yeah, like a little bit, like it was maybe a little bit harder than I normally would have if it was just a work. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I was definitely pumped about that. But again, reflecting on it, it's just something that I didn't even know what I had when I had it.
Mhm. Now, like you also with we met at Real Championship Wrestling.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember the first show we met at. It was the why do I always forget the name of it? It was October in 2012 when Raina came. RCW Reloaded.
Okay.
And but so you're not just at CZW, you're wrestling at different places.
Was
Can you
I was I was I myself or was I Lance Steele for that show? Do you remember?
That's
Or was I?
I think you was Lance Steel.
I might have been.
Yeah, I think
Well,
on the
did I come out to Gangnam Style? I can't remember.
I can't even remember.
Because if I did, I was Lance Steele and I wrestled Robbie. So I don't know. But and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. I know that I had done Lance Steele there once or twice. Once or
Okay.
twice.
But yeah, 'cause like, and I believe that was my sister's first independent, no, first wrestling show. She had never been to wrestling. But that was the first time I had worked. And I was doing backstage announcing. I did one interview that was with Greg Excellent. Shout out to Greg, you had him on your show.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and But can you just talk about the grind of being on the independent circuit? Because you CZW somewhere you grew up and well you discovered and then started working there, but you also, you're still trying to make a name for yourself. So you trying to, get your stuff out there. So can you just talk about that and the grind of it?
Oh, and, like, trying to expand a little bit?
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was one of these guys that kinda always just thought things would just happen on their own. I would say that I wasn't always the best at branching out and reaching out if it wasn't pretty local, I wasn't all about it. I don't know if that was like a fear or like, now as I reflect on my life a lot, I think that just like anxiety and just fear may have controlled me and unknowingly, you know what I mean? Like I may have had this fear of commitment and success. And that sounds weird, but like, if I committed myself more to taking leaps and traveling or, moving, or whatever people do to further their careers nowadays. Some people move to Florida or wherever, uh, I think I had fears about that because what would I do then? I would break my routine. I would break my comfortable bubble that I'm in or whatever. So I mean, I was stuck in sort of, and I don't want to say stuck because it was by choice. I was very much in like a CZW Chikara bubble for a long time. Like in that they were the main two places I worked, certainly in the early going of my career. And then we'll say in the early aughts, I don't know what you call it, like the first half of the first decade, I started to branch out a little bit to some local places. I know I worked for Rock and Rebel. I don't know if you can say that name anymore. He had a company BWO. I worked there just to get more licks in, get some more rotations in. Um, ACPW, just another local Philly promotion. Um, and then I would say a few years later, I started to work for Excite Wrestling. Um, I'm just drawing a blank at the moment, but it does become difficult trying to break it in elsewhere if you're not necessarily coming in on the good word of somebody that's already working someplace. It can be
Mhm.
difficult to or obviously if you're not friends with the promoter like I was with RCW and things like that. Certainly not as good of friends as we are now, but friends nonetheless.
Mhm.
um it can be difficult to get your foot in the door because there really are so many spots. There's even fewer spots than anybody wants. And wrestling's a very selfish, individualistic business, and people don't want to give them up when they have them. So it can be really tough. But to speak to the grind aspect of what you were saying, um, if you're taking life seriously, wrestling certainly in the early years and in the early going, it's not going to be all you do to survive. You're more than likely going to have a job on top of trying to be a pro wrestler, or you might already have a family and a job on top of trying to be a pro wrestler or whatever. So there's going to be times where you're working a show, driving all night, sleeping for a few hours, and then going to work. And you I remember spending a lot of time being sick because like as an adult now, I know a lot more about just health, general health and nutrition and rest and how vital all that is for your immune system. And I can reflect on my 20s and early 30s and the shit that I did in wrestling, and it's like, no wonder you fucking had sinus infections all the time and you were sick and shit because you never slept. You were sharing joints and blunts with people and staying out way too late, getting like I don't want to say trashed, but drinking and getting fucked up, screaming in each other's face, spitting all over each other. You know, if the pandemic has taught us nothing, it's like, oh yeah, that's why I was fucking sick all the time because I constantly jeopardized my immune system.
Hmm.
So you know, trying to make it in wrestling and certainly branching out is a tough grind.
Yeah. And before we close the wrestling book, you win
Sure.
your first world championship. You remember
Yeah.
that moment? What can you tell the people what it was like? Because you're the guy. Company is now built around you. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, because we've spent a good bit of time now talking about discovering CZW, starting training there, uh, getting good there, making mistakes there, making some of the biggest mistakes and worst mistakes in my career there. But to eventually, even though I don't know, I guess that it was 2014 when I won the title. I started training in 2002. 12 years later, being with the company, um, to finally be handed the ball. Not that I was ever even asking for it. Like that's the weird thing. Like all the time that I had spent there, it's not a prize I ever set my eyes on.
Mhm.
It's just something that by happenstance it worked that way, because of the program I was in with Drew Gulak and Biff Busick was in my group and with G's and just like I mean, I owe a lot of it to Drew Gulak because he had influence with the story and the booking at the time. He was by no means the book, but he just had influence, we'll say. So I definitely owe a lot to him as far as orchestrating how the whole saga between the front and the campaign went, like for the year plus that went on. So that was just really crazy that it even happened, is I guess is what I'm trying to say. But to eventually, and I remember when Drew and I were talking months before it actually happened, and he informed me that that was the plan, and it kind of just like glazed over me, like I didn't hear what he said at first. He's like, "Yeah, so after Biff's gonna win the title off of me in May, and he's gonna hold it for a long time, and then you're gonna take it in this month, and then you're gonna drop it at Cage of Death." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And then I said, "What did you say?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna take the title." And I was like, I think I said, "I'm gonna be world champion?" And he's like, "Yeah." Like, you know what I mean? Like, because again, I wasn't asking for that. I didn't know that that was coming, and also I had to restrain my jubilation. You know what I mean? I had to not be like, "I'm gonna win this." You know what I mean? So that's just the God honest truth. So I was very giddy to find out that I was going to be world champion. Um, it definitely made me, knowing that I was going to be, it made me work really hard in the gym. Like, I mean, go somebody, pull up. I'm for the graphic for this video. I'm gonna get you what I looked like in 2014. There'll be a photograph by Blizz Photography, and it was the best shape I was ever in. So we're not gonna. So what I'll do is I'll Photoshop my head and hair on that body for the graphic for this video. So
Okay.
that's what we'll do. So needless to say, it's October of 2014, and I'm about to win the title. And, obviously we were psyched up. But again, it was kind of business as usual. I had a promo to do in the ring after Biff had just wrestled Chris Dickinson. And, like, long story short, without getting into details, the way that I won the world title, I sort of money in the banked it away from Biff Busick. I had an opportunity. I took advantage of the number one guy in my own group and sort of kiboshed him right after he had got done winning I'm not done right after he got done defending the championship is what I was trying to say. So I had to do the promo. We had to, stab him in the back and get through the whole motions of doing it. And then I had another promo like after I was done, which if you go back and watch, I was white hot. I was definitely saying too many curse words. uh, but I was just pumped up, because I was trying to set the tone for like the era that it was going to be, even though it was short lived. It was only 2 months before G's would take the title from me at Cage of Death. Um, it was just like I said, it was a I was living a moment that I never thought I would. You know what I mean? E- if you rewind back to at that moment, 2002, like, when I'm in college and we started coming to these shows, and I never thought that I would someday be wrestling Ruckus. Like, because if you go back and watch Cage of Death 3, you see me slapping hands with him. You know what I mean? I never thought I would be wrestling him. I never thought that 20 years later, I'd be going to his house still, you know what I mean, to hang out every couple of, months or whatever, like, every time we can. So so like I said, to then also be winning the world title in this company that it's amazing that I was even in. It was a surreal experience. It was pretty fucking cool.
I want to take a quick minute to talk about mental health. As you all know, we are living in unprecedented times, whether it's the racial pandemic or the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I want to introduce you to Hope Again Counseling Services, where transformation begins. Hope Again provides help for children, adolescents, adults, family, and couples. So give them a call at 410-698-8442 or visit them on the web at yourhopeagain.com to book your appointment. If you are willing to believe, you will begin to achieve, and ultimately, Hope Again Counseling Services can help you receive all that is meant for you. That's awesome, man. I'm always, me, I
Yeah.
always love a good wrestling story.
Yeah.
So was
Yeah.
this one of the shows that you brought invited your family to and told them be there, or by
Uh,
now did you kind of like, well, if you come, you come, you don't, you don't?
a- like, you know what? I feel like for some reason, I think because of the way that I was winning it, I don't know that a lot of people were coming. I don't know that I necessarily made it a point to be like, you got to be there. Um, yeah, like I really can't remember if anybody significant was there, so I want to say they probably weren't. And
Mhm.
that's by no means to say that my family wasn't supportive of my career or my choices. I know that all along the way, my mom and dad would want me to stop, like, especially early on, a few matches in, I broke my nose. And then, a few months later, I got like a bad contusion on my back, like vertebrae. And like, they're like, all right, you're done now, right? Like, and I'm like, nope, no, I'm not. I'm not done. So I'm gonna do this for a lot more years. But so aside from worrying about their baby, you know what I mean, my
Mhm.
family was very supportive, because
Yeah,
I know that I don't want my son anywhere near a wrestling ring.
tell me about it. Oh man, now you were there. I mean, you talked about you was white hot. Do you like remember specific things from the crowd that night? Because perhaps there was a kid who will one day, 12 years later, win a world championship. And I don't know if you ever thought about it like that, but do you like remember any instances where, was the crowd shocked? I
Yeah.
remember hearing about it, and then I think I may have heard that you was getting the title, because
Hmm.
I was in Connecticut at the time working at ESPN, and I remember it was a big fallout beforehand where you were very vocal in the locker room, and it wasn't because you wanted to win a championship; it was because you wanted law and order stored in the locker room. So I remember hearing about that. I was like, "Get him!" But
What what are you referring to? Just to
uh,
refresh my memory.
apparently, well, Blake had told me one time you had to cuss DJ out. Something happened, and
Probably. Yeah.
and it was
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just trying to think of which time. That's why I was like,
yeah.
remind me what was going on.
It was
Yeah.
like a month literally like a month before you became champion. I
Oh, yeah,
remember
okay.
that, and then because I thought it was cool that like, wow, you cussed out the owner
But
of the
the
company.
boss cussed out the boss and still get the big belt. Still
Yeah,
got the big belt.
look, you was
Got
my
that clout.
right, and look, at the time I didn't feel, because I didn't know him, I only heard about him. to fast forward 4 years later, I don't want to see him. But
Right.
at that time, I didn't know. I just heard bad things about him. But I thought that was just the coolest thing because I was like, yeah, he stood up to him, and then
Yeah.
boom, now he's a world champion.
I'm gonna have to get the details from Blake because he's like a fucking hard drive. He don't forget anything, and
He
he'll
don't.
he'll know he'll know the he'll know the play by play, and he'll tell me exactly what I did and what I said.
But so now we move forward, man. And when did you know it was time to hang it up? I had the pleasure of, watching you in the ring when I came back to Baltimore, and then I was going, working with CZW and WSU. And, by this time, I think your son was born, or maybe he was on the
No, not
way.
yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
so yeah,
I was gonna say. I mean, if you saw me and I was performing, he wasn't born yet.
bingo. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because I legitimately had my last match, other than I've come back a few times. I made an appearance at Lyle C. Williams show,
Mhm.
and I made an appearance at one of the anniversary shows for a Hall of Fame induction to help induct Adam Flash. As a matter of fact, Danny Rose and I roasted his ass, but that's neither here nor there. So my last match of my career, other than bullshit appearances, was August 13th of 2016. My
Mhm.
son was born a month later, 9/14/16.
That's my
So
grandmother's birthday. That's a great day.
is it
Yeah,
awesome?
may she rest in peace.
Oh, rest in peace. And also Penelope Ford's birthday as well,
Oh,
because
okay.
when my son was born, she pointed that out. Um, Shout out to Livy. Um, so what was I saying about? What was I
So
talking about?
August 13th,
Oh yeah,
your
that was
last
yeah,
match.
yeah. So yeah, that was my last match. Because I just wanted to be done before my son was born. Like my goal was to not have any more matches while he was on Earth, just because I, and I know not everybody thinks this way, and this is not a dig or a negative comment towards any wrestler who has children. I
Mhm.
just thought to myself at I guess I was 34 at the time. Yeah, because he's 4 now. Um I decided that I was old enough and had been doing it long enough that it just becomes a roll of the dice every time I go out there, and it's just a matter of time before I get hurt. And not necessarily the big one hurt, but just hurt in a way that's gonna leave me on crutches, or in some kind of splint, or a shoulder sling or something. And I just knew I wasn't particularly well off enough that I could fuck around like that. I needed to get my life together and get my ducks in a row because I had a family to worry about now, and not just myself. So I thought, like, there's no way I could risk my physical well-being anymore with a child to worry about. And no matter what your job is, if you sit behind a desk, if you deliver mail, if you're, whatever, like, if you do have a physical labor job and you roll an ankle taking an arm drag one weekend and you can't do your job, you can't feed your family. And that was just my outlook. Like, I need to be physically well. I can't risk breaking my neck and starting to GoFundMe or whatever the fuck everybody else does. And respect to everybody else that wants to fuck your life up and need help, because for the fans who are definitely not going to be there at your funeral. But, so I just decided I need to be done by then. And that was it. And it wasn't even like that difficult of a decision either. Like, oh man, should I? This is going to be hard. I was like, nah, I'm done with this shit anyway. I'm done with this company. I'm pretty much done with the business, and in my opinion, how fucked up it is and always will be. Um,
Was it
I
ceremonious for you internally? Like, how, so for instance, I'll give you an example. This past March, well, last March, I was almost certain that it was going to be my last time playing drums for my gospel group, right? And
right.
I had been doing this since I was 18, and at that time I was 33. And and I haven't officially quit yet. COVID happened.
Sure,
So
sure. Sure.
some
So you haven't
things.
been doing it, right?
Yeah, but going into that anniversary show, because and Blake will tell you, I tell him all the time, pro wrestling is, I realize how much gospel quartet and pro wrestling are similar, and you wouldn't think so, but between the politics, the only difference is people out there trying to perform and they singing, but they saying Jesus in the lyrics. That's literally
Right.
the only difference.
Right.
And granted, there are some people who really, really are spiritual and they express it through song. My group was one of them. But
Right.
just seeing how other groups act. But that whole weekend, I said, this is it. I'm done. This is gonna be the final time I have my drumsticks. And when I'm finished, I'm gonna take off the sticks. I'm gonna tell my nephew, come to the drums. I'm passing him the torch. Everybody could tell you. But I remember like leading up every single step. And the only reason why I didn't officially quit because my group manager turned the group over to his son. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Well, maybe I want to be a part of this. Because I was going, I didn't want to tell him that this was my last rodeo because I didn't want to
Right.
put a damper on the anniversary. So I said I'll
Sure.
wait until afterwards.
Sure.
I ain't need no going home
Yeah.
celebration. But
Sure, sure. No bummer. Yeah, yeah. You didn't want to leave him with a bummer.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, right,
so
right,
with
right.
you going into that last day, how many people knew? Did you like take mental notes? And like, is it a day that you'll always remember, or is just
I think I will. I think I'll always remember aspects of that day. Um, and I don't know if it's because of the career path that I chose, getting hit on the head a lot or whatever. But my memory gets foggier the farther away I get from things. But I guess that's most people and most things. Um, but there's definitely aspects of that day I'll always remember, like that last time being behind the curtain before I went out. Um, Going over the match with Kurt Robinson. Shout out to my buddy Kurt, Little Rob. Uh, but I'm trying to think of what else. High fiving a bunch of people. I remember Greg coming up to me and giving me a big hug. Uh, you know, he was certainly somebody that was always and always will be special for me. Um, I remember coming out and not really being a baby face or a heel. I mean, I was the baby face going into it. That's the story that we sold. The story of the match is trainer Nico Sozio is trying to teach a lesson to the, cocky, arrogant 16-year-old student Kurt Robinson who's being disrespectful to me in my career. So that's the story of the match. And I don't it wasn't like a if I lose I retire thing. It was like this is my last match and I want it to be you, you little prick, and I'm going to teach you a lesson type thing. Oh, and the other poetic aspect of this being I was his first pro wrestling match when he was 14 years old, 2 years prior to that.
oh
So when he was
wow.
14, I kicked the shit out of him and bloodied his lip with the Yakuza kick. And then I fucked him up again that night too. So we'll have to interlace a few clips of that into this podcast. Um, so I also remember walking out and, trying not to well up or get sad or cry because uh, it even now it's tough to talk about because I it it was the first time like like I really saw it's not to say that that crowd never respected me because they did. Um it was a different kind of respect. They always respected me enough to treat me like the heel that I was playing
Mhm.
or the baby face that I was for a brief amount of time. Um, but everybody got stood up while they were clapping. You know what I mean? Like they started clapping and people stood up, and then that made more people stand up. And I was like, what the fuck? So there was that. And I'm walking around the ring, high fiving people, like trying to soak it all in. And then I see my dad who's on the hard camera side and he's crying, you know.
Wow.
So, I hug him and he says, "I love you so much," and I say, "I love you" to him. Sorry, I'm getting upset here. Uh, and it was just awesome, and I'll never forget that. I hugged him. I got up on the apron. We went to start the match, and Kurt actually messed up, like, and he jumped me before we said he was going to jump me, and but it was better. Like it was so much better. Like we were going to have Larry do the intros and then he was going to jump me, but he jumped me before Larry got to introduce me even.
Oh
So
man.
it actually worked out better, so that after the match, after Kurt beat me, he left the ring and Larry got back in the ring, and then we did my intro. Like, so he read all my credentials and everything that I accomplished in CZW, this, that, and the other thing. And then I got to say my piece, which, was pretty funny. And if you've never seen it, there's a couple of choice moments that are really funny
That's
in
awesome,
my
man.
in my farewell speech to wrestling and CZW.
I can appreciate you telling that story, because anybody who knows me knows, and I said this on your show, I will never call wrestling fake. It's predetermined, it's a script, it's a story, but
Sure.
everything you just named was real. Your dad
Yeah.
being
Oh
there,
yeah.
even when you talk about your first match, you winning your first championships, like everything is real because it's something you literally gave you gave your life to. Um and so that's just awesome. One of the things that I've learned watching you as we transition into your podcast is that you seem like at peace. You know, shout out, we almost at a year on the late great Kobe Bryant's death. And I've heard a
Yeah. How
lot of,
about that?
yeah, man. And I heard a lot of
Can't
people
believe
say,
that's almost a year.
yeah, that he was happier post NBA career. And
Well, yeah.
and it was like he was winning all these championships and stuff, but it seemed like he was happier. And like I could see in you, like with your family, your son, you could see the happiness. What led you into podcasting? And I like the name Struggling with Sozio because it's a real thing, and I think a lot of times people don't realize, everybody likes the glitz and the glamour. Everybody thinks podcasting is easy. And my last week's guest was Daniel Artest, the brother of Ron Artest. And we
Okay.
was talking about that, and he has the Daniel Artest podcast. And like him telling you, somebody who's been doing this for 11 years, I got to give a shout out because it's one thing that's hard to do, and y'all been doing it. It's consistency. It's not
Trying,
easy,
man.
you know.
Trying to
And
be like, yeah.
yeah,
I
so
was just
what
saying, like,
led
yeah,
you
it's
to it?
tough. What led me to it?
Mhm.
I did, I think I started listening to podcasts 2014, 2015-ish. I think like a lot of people my age at the time and my demographic, I fell ass backwards into the Joe Rogan podcast, and like a lot of people branched out into like a lot of the different LA comedians podcasts, like Tom Segura and his wife Christina P, Ari Shafir, um, Duncan Trussell. I'm just trying to think of some of the other big ones I listened to. Joey Diaz, but just a lot of these LA comedians who have now, since the pandemic, moved all over the place, since LA is like no longer a thing. But so I guess, I spent a lot of time listening, like as a fan at first. And for me, I spent a lot of time alone these last 4 years, between just like not being a wrestler anymore, but the job that I had for the past 3 years, not currently. I worked by myself. You know what I mean? So I just had my headphones in a lot, and I was listening to podcasts a lot, and it felt like there was a lot of like these conversations that I was sitting in on, but not getting to participate in on, and it was like driving me crazy. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of these really funny conversations that I know that I would have with my friends, or, that I was capable of having. And like I was just like, man, like I want to do that. Like I could do this. Like this would be fun, and it would be sort of a creative outlet that would sort of feed my need for people to pay attention to me that I don't have from wrestling anymore. So, I mean, that was the kind of idea behind it. And then as far as the concept, I mean, I've gotten away from it a little bit over the last several episodes just because I don't know. It's hard to, it's a hard topic to sort of stay on. But the idea behind the show, Struggling with Sozio, as you said, was to sort of corner people and sit people down and get them to talk about some of the hardest things that they've been through. And for everybody, that's something different. That could be an addiction, that could be a loss, a death, or something. It could be an injury you had to overcome. Maybe it's a career related thing. But ultimately, get into and sink our teeth into some aspect of a person's life. Talk about it, how they got over it, how they're getting over it, what they're working on, or whatever. Like, for we talked about Greg Excellent earlier. He's been on my show. We talked about him doing keto these last 2 years, 3 years, and losing what, 150, 160 pounds, like some absurd amount of weight. Like he's under 200 pounds and he was 3 plus, you know what I mean? I've talked to Tim Donce about overcoming kidney cancer and coming back to wrestling. In another episode, I've talked to him about how his father attempted to kill his mother. All this wonderful shit that, and the idea was that, like, listening to this show, and then we would also have some laughs along the way, because you got to laugh at the tragedy, and I guess the idea that would be that people listen to this show and somehow, some way feel a little bit better about their day and their life, because you're not doing as bad as Tim Donst. You know what I mean?
What's been some of your like, I guess to say, when you look back at it, would you call it been therapeutic? Because for me, podcasting, whether I'm doing a show with somebody, I'm talking about a trending topic, or I'm doing a wrestling show, I've learned that it can be therapeutic. Have you felt the same?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, just as you're saying that and mentioning that, I kind of left that out as to why started the podcast, was just in general, not just for the sake of exploiting the bad things that happen to people for my own entertainment and the viewers and the listeners, but
Mhm.
I just don't think people talk about that stuff enough, and I think they should. And I don't think people in general talk enough, because they either text to each other or, even FaceTime or whatever. But ultimately, there's just not enough human interaction. I like the idea of just sitting and talking with somebody, whether it's about their problems, my problems, or conspiracy theories or whatever. Like, it's just fun. It's an exercise of language and the mind that, like, we're just not doing enough of anymore. We're just not doing it. And I think it's a detriment to our minds, our culture, our consciousness, and like I said, that was just a big driving force in wanting to do it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I know me when I was younger, I was always wanting, and still am, to quickly pick up the phone and call somebody. And the way you just put that is so true, because we do spend and I see people on Instagram. We be texting and then somebody call and they throw a meme like, "Why are you calling me?" And I know the generation is the ones
Yeah.
under millennials. I don't even think, well, they will FaceTime more, but
Yeah, that's
you
what I
know,
hear, actually.
yeah.
I hear that the generation now that, like, 15, 16-year-olds, they
Mhm.
text and FaceTime. They don't call. Like,
Yeah.
they text and FaceTime. Like,
Yes,
there's no in between. There's no in
because it's
between.
weird. I remember when I first got my iPhone, and that was in 2011. It was almost as if you were only supposed to FaceTime like a significant other, or somebody of the
Yeah,
opposite
well, that shit
sex.
was data heavy, man.
That's
That shit
true.
wasn't,
We
yeah,
ain't
man,
have
like, you needed to be in good Wi-Fi to do that, man. Like, that
yeah.
wasn't like nowadays.
And then I think one day I just noticed like two kids like FaceTime, and they were like basketball players. I'm like, oh, so y'all not clowning and saying, why you FaceTiming another dude? You know what I mean? And this is, I'm not making like the jokes, but I'm saying that's the way everything was, because I remember hearing that at first, like, why would you FaceTime another guy, whatever. So now I've learned that, okay, so this is what kids do. They quick, boom, you FaceTime. Like my son is 11 and my nephew just turned, I want to say 7 yesterday. And
Okay.
he will FaceTime, and my daughter's 5, she'll be 6 at the end of the month. He'll FaceTime them all day.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a generational thing. But hey, hopefully they'll be better at talking and interacting.
Yeah, man, like, trust me, I I think every generation goes through it, like, our parents didn't want us to play video games and watch TV so much,
Hmm.
and, like, my son is already pretty fluent with these things, and his tablet, his Kindle or whatever, and it's just like, I don't want him to use it too much for the sheer fact of his eyes, you know what I mean? But, like, well, should I think it would be the wrong thing to do to deprive a kid of technology nowadays, especially touch screen interfaces of any kind, because
Hmm.
it's going to be how he does everything. It's how we do everything. And like how he does everything, we probably can't even imagine yet. It's going to be some Minority Report shit in his mind, just moving things around. Like, yep, and I've transferred out of my savings into my checking here. Hang on, I just got to turn this. You know what I mean? Like
They
whether
don't even write no more.
no, dude,
you
I
know,
hate that. I fucking hate as somebody that has really good handwriting and print.
yeah.
Fuck everybody that's not learning how or teaching people how to write these days.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't do
okay, yeah,
cursive no more.
iPhones, blah blah. Yeah, and learn how to spell too. The phone's not always gonna be there, you shits, you lazy shits. And do math correctly with this Common Core shit. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Hey, my wife's
Already started.
she's a teacher, and she had when she learned it, she had to teach parents, and she kept saying like, "We need to teach the parents how to do math because the parent." And I was like, "Well, Common Core." And then one day, because I, for the most part, homework I leave that up to her. I mean, my daughter's, she's using a tablet, but
Right.
one day my son was like, "Oh yeah, we gotta do this, this, and this to get the answer." I'm like, why y'all gotta do all that? And
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
explained to me it was like Americans are like on the lower totem pole as a whole in math compared to other countries. So they have to
Yeah.
figure out something different. But for those of us who know it, we're like, why you doing all that?
Well, not just that. I mean, this sounds mean too, and I'm not trying to be, but there's always been a way to differentiate who's getting the curriculum and who's not.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
can't we take whoever's getting it and put them over here in the class where they're not going to show them this cockamamie way, backwards ass, extra work ass way to come up with the same answer as the shorthand way, which is just as effective and, you know, educational. Like, come
uh,
on now.
See,
Come
it's
on
funny
now.
because I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade, and
Okay.
8th grade I had a nun, and she was the math teacher, and everybody kept swearing she's great at her math, but you had to do things her way to get the answer, and if you didn't
Yes.
in algebra, you were in trouble. And
Show
when I
the
went to
work.
high school, I had teachers showing me the shortcuts. I was like, so I was struggling in 8th grade for no reason. Where if they just because my mother was like, why are you doing it? Why you just do? I was like, no, I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't show the work. And so I agree with you on that one.
Yeah,
Separate.
I mean, it just gets to be too much. You're like, come on now, like, and I understand if there's a real need or a way that we need to catch American kids up to other nations in certain curriculum and subjects, let's figure it out. But
Mhm,
let's address where the problem really is, and
mhm.
it, I hate to be that guy with it starts at home, but it starts at home. You know, we need to rebuild the American family infrastructure, ladies
Oh,
and
we,
gentlemen.
we we definitely seeing that, especially with everything going on during this pandemic, and seeing who's helping their children with work and who's not. You know.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is we have several generations and several generations of adults who weren't parented by anybody other than TV and the internet. So you see what happens. You see
Yep.
what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. In the church house, they say babies was raising babies.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It doesn't work.
yeah, before we get out of here, man, I gotta ask you,
Yes, sir.
What was your breaking through the glass moment, whether it was in podcasting, whether it was in wrestling, a moment where you felt good about what you was doing?
I guess you kind of mean like where I felt like like you kind of asked earlier, like I wasn't necessarily the trainee anymore, but I was actually doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a real good question. I think for podcasting, it was probably hitting the 1 year mark and having probably like 47, 48 episodes under my belt. Um, the goal was to have 52, and I was just shy of that. I started it a little over a year ago, and I wanted to say that I was on pace for one a week. And I'm not complaining or bragging when I say this is all while having a full-time job and trying to be a good dad and good boyfriend and uh and a few other extracurricular activities I'm involved in. It's when you're trying to have high production and high quality everything, it's a lot of work. So well, I'd say when I came up on the 1 year mark and my momentum hadn't really slowed down too much, I was pretty happy about that with podcasting. And um even just like seeing like the downloads come in, you know what I mean? Not to say that there's a lot, but just once you start seeing people share your stuff and your downloads and things like that, even though again it's nothing to brag about, you just feel like, oh, I'm doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the thing that I thought I daydreamed about when I was listening to The Fighter and the Kid, with some of my favorite comedians and stuff. So that was sort of the moment for me. And in wrestling, I'd say, it was in CZW probably when I was feuding with Derek Frazier, because it was the first time like he and I were really getting noticed by ourselves, not attached to any group or any tag team. And the matches we were having, like people like I said, like Claude were pulling us aside, and I'll never forget this stupid shit he said. And this is something that only Ruckus could say. He goes, "Yo, you guys, that match was so hot the sun was sweating." Like
If anybody knows Ruckus,
I think he, or it was something to the tune of "Y'all made the sun sweat." Like that
yeah.
shit was so hot, y'all made the sun sweat. And I was like, "Gee," well, like I was happy about it, but 20 years later, 15 years later, whatever it is, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was so stupid. It was so stupid, but
He
hilarious.
probably
But I get back to the point, like having some of these guys that I used to watch and look
Mhm.
up to and do things that I never thought I was capable of doing come up to me and tell me that I did well. That was pretty much like the moment for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Uh, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. I'll take your
For
time
sure,
out of your
man.
busy schedule because, like I said, I know it's hard. We literally in the same boat: full time job, families, and
Yeah.
podcasting, and
Yeah.
just other stuff we got going on. So you making the sacrifice, man, it definitely means a lot to me.
For sure, man. Anytime. Anytime I got the time and you need it, it's yours, buddy. And yeah, we'll definitely do it again as soon as possible. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, no problem, man. Once all this pandemic stuff, we definitely gonna have to link up. It's
Yeah,
been too
man.
long.
Yeah, trust me. Like once we're allowed to see people again, I want to see as many people as possible and do as many of these interviews in person as we can. Because we've had a really good connection tonight. There hasn't been any issues or delays other than that one little hiccup.
Hmm.
But I just feel like doing it this way, you always lose a little bit of something when you're not right near somebody. You can't read them as well. You know what I mean? You can't feel their
Yeah.
heat, can't feel the body language, you can't sense their aura, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do it in person as much as possible.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, buddy. Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you really enjoyed that conversation I had with my buddy Nico Sozio. Really hope a lot of you out there got a chance to learn a little bit about the wrestling business. I felt that this was a great conversation to have, and it wouldn't be just for the wrestling realm audience, but I thought a lot of people I know could benefit from it. Coming up next week, I bring on a new social media friend someone who I've been following on Twitter and vice versa, and that's the one and only Miss Sydney Simone. Sydney is a reporter, and we have a good conversation about her career, especially getting a chance to talk about what it's like reporting in the times of COVID-19. So you won't want to miss it, folks. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends. Make sure you also check out some of the uncomfortable conversations that I had. Had a lot to say about COVID-19 and the school system. So thanks everybody for joining, and I appreciate each and every one of you who has tuned in. Please remember, break through all glass ceilings that are set upon you. This podcast was recorded and edited by B Waters Productions. The music by Hypno Beats. Make sure you follow him at Hypno_Beats with a Z on Instagram.